one and all. This is frontstretch.com. Alex Gintz, Christopher DeHardy, coming to you live from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Christopher, we are about to step into a very special place, aren't we?
Yes, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum has been closed for a long while, but last month it opened up to much fanfare. And I tell you, I wrote in my Upon Further Review column after going through the museum did not get a facelift during this convalescence of almost 18 months. This was truly open heart surgery. You don't even recognize the building that you knew back in November 2023 is not the same building that you're walking into now. The entire inside has been completely redone. It is amazing to walk inside. We're going to go and take a look at a few things there and see a few surprises along the way.
All right, good deal. Well, we've got microphones, we've got cameras, we've got an entire front stretch crew on site, so let's take a look inside. All right, we are officially inside. Christopher, we're standing in the entranceway to the museum that showcases a bit of the history of Gasoline Alley and how this race, its competitors, its machinery have evolved over the years. And this is where people are going to get the first proper taste of all the heart, all the effort, all the money, all the time that's gone into renovating this museum and giving it that rebirth you talked about. Where do we start here?
Well, we'll start at the beginning. It's a good place to start, of course. So one thing that you're going to notice as you walk through this exhibit, your feet are going to be going on three different surfaces. The very first surface you're going to step on is going to be is meant to be a representation of the crushed rock and tar, which was the original track surface here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The next surface you're going to go on is a simulation of the bricks that permeated much of the track from the 1909, the fall of 1909, when they were all laid down until 1962, when the track had asphalt over the greater part of the main straight, except for the yard of bricks. And then you have the asphalt after that as well. It's just a great exhibit over here that showcases what work goes into the greatest spectacle in racing. We can also see, if you look over in the side of the buildings over here, the changes in the structure that were the workspaces for all the mechanics back in the day, from the green and white wooden structures to the concrete buildings that went up in 1985, 86. It's just a great exhibit that showcases the mechanics and the tools that went into building the cars that tamed the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
As visitors to the museum move through this section, they're going to see these cars, but they're also going to look to their left and see a ton of history in a much more, let's say stereotypically museum-style display. What's on display on the left-hand side here, since we don't have the time to go through all of that history?
Yeah, we're not going to go through everything. What I can say is that there's some things out here that you wouldn't be able to see in the old museum because they had the sunlight that came through with the skylight. For example, the original the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Incorporation documents are over there, as well as the original contract for all the bricks that were brought in to pave the track back in 1909. But you can see a bunch of different artifacts through the decades of different drivers, whether it's helmets or crew shirts or different press clippings, different pieces of technology with the radio network. There's all sorts of different things that showcase the Indianapolis 500 through the decades.
Let's move on and check out some of these cars. All right, stop number one. We've picked out a few historic cars here to go over. The first one, Christopher, I believe is A.J. Foyt's rookie car for the Indy 500.
Yes, A.J. Foyt drove this car in 1958, but the year before that, Jimmy Bryan drove this car in 1957. Al Dean, if there was a team owner you wanted to drive for back in the late 50s, Al Dean was it. You were somebody if you drove the Dean Van Line Special. And Jimmy Bryan drove this car in 1957 before, as I mentioned, Foyt did in 58. Even more fun than that, a few weeks after the Indy 500 in 1957, there was the Race of Two Worlds out in Monza. Jimmy Bryan drove this car out there, competed against a bunch of Formula One cars, and actually won the Race of Two Worlds at Monza with this car behind me.
This is a perfect representation of what we look at and think of, cigars on wheels, let's say. These cars were so minimalistic, there was no protection, the tires were so narrow, but the engines were still in the front. We haven't quite turned the corner in the middle of the 20th century to when these became proper, advanced, purpose-built racing machines.
The old adage was iron cars for iron men, and it showed. Not a lot of drivers survived their careers back in those days.
Let's jump ahead a few years. When it comes to legendary race car drivers from the mid-1900s, Jim Clark, talk about a name. We're standing here in front of this, I believe, 1964 entry, rear-engined, iconic Lotus racing green and yellow. Tires a little bit wider, but the technology behind us shows this is still a very primitive era compared to where we stand today.
Yes, having the engine behind the drivers was almost seen as sacrosanct, sacrilegious, if you will, back in the mid-1960s. Jim Clark drove this car in 1964. The Dunlop tires, unfortunately, did not stand up to the Indianapolis 500 back then. The left rear suspension collapsed, and he had to withdraw from the race, unfortunately. But the following year, in 1965, he won the race. It was a dominant win, and it surely showed that the era of the Roadster was coming to an end very quickly.
3 decades forward, let's jump. We're here barreling toward the split era, looking at the mid-1990s in American open wheel racing. I would say, personally, the most extreme era of the sport. Arie Luyendyk, the fastest car to do a 4-lap run around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. What does this car represent, not only for Indianapolis, but for the sport as a whole?
It represented daredevils. Arie Luyendyk set a new 1 and 4 lap track record with this machine back in 1996. A 1 lap record, if my memory is correct, of 237.498 miles per hour. His 4 lap qualifying average was 236.986 miles per hour. He did not start on the pole, however, for that race because his original qualifying time was disallowed because his primary car was underweight, so he had to qualify this car not on the first day of qualifying, but I believe on the second day of qualifying. 1996, you had a tire war going on between Goodyear and Firestone. You had an extra 1.5 feet of racetrack, and the Speedway had been repaved in the summer of 1995, so you had brand new pavement, soft tires. It was incredible to see those speeds back then, but it was very, very dangerous as well.
And it was a new track record over and over and over again. Before we move on to the heart of the museum, we've got to stop at the start line experience. All right, Christopher, we've got to leave the starting line experience to the imagination, unfortunately, because it is truly incredible what the museum has done with this show that kind of serves as an intermission before things really pick up with the central exhibits. Walk us through, just all the effort that the museum has put in really shows at this part.
So the starting line experience, it kind of gives everybody kind of a bit of a tease into what is race day here at the Indianapolis 500. It starts off at 4:30 in the morning when the crews get here to work on their cars. Then the cannon goes off at 6 a.m. and it just goes through the crowd coming in, the snake pit firing up, then all the different pre-race ceremonies, and it's just eerie how accurate it is. And what's even cooler and what I think is really awesome is they wrap up the cars as if they're on the front row of the grid, and shortly after the qualifying for the 2025 Indy 500, they went out and got the wraps for Robert Schwartzman, for Takuma Sato and Pato Award's cars, and they put it in on the 3 cars that are in the exhibit that's in the coming up here around the corner. Go see it. I highly recommend that you come in. It is insanely awesome.
It's very easy to forget that this is an event and not just a race, and hundreds of thousands of people come from all walks of life, all corners of the earth to see this one event. Christopher, this experience, the start line experience, I think really brings to life everything that happens off the track leading up to that.
Off the track and on the track, because you basically are standing, you're simulated to be standing on the racetrack during the pre-race ceremonies, and it's really emotional because you can actually get a feeling, a small taste of what it's like to actually be on the track during the pre-race ceremonies when they go through the most poignant moments before the race begins and the green flag drops.
Well, like I said, we can't show you all that. We have to leave something to the imagination and let the museum have their 15 minutes of fame, let's say. But on the other side of that start line experience, the green flag will have flown on the rest of our tour through this museum.
Can't wait.
There's cars behind us, there's stuff above us, below us, to our left, to our right. Where do we start before we really dig into the heart of this museum?
We're going to start with the fact that this mezzanine above us did not exist 18 months ago when they started the construction here. I mentioned this is open heart surgery for this museum. That's what I'm talking about. This whole area was opened up completely with the building upstairs. We're going to start with the winning cars, and I tell you what, I can't wait to go through them all with you.
There's a ton of history to experience here, a ton to explore. Let's get started. All right, we are here at Stop 1 for many visitors that come and see this exhibit. Stop 1 for this race as we know it. We are standing here, Christopher, in front of Ray Haroon's 1911 Marmon Wasp, the first ever Indianapolis 500 winning car. Walk us through this history.
Well, so back in 1911, Ray Haroon decided that unlike the rest of his competitors, he wanted to have just himself in the car. Back then, it wasn't necessarily mandated, but it was encouraged to have a riding mechanic along with you to check the track and make sure that you were going to be safe in case someone was trying to pass you. Haroon argued it was going to be a safety hazard, so he decided, well, he was going to take a mirror, mount it up on struts on the cowling behind us, and make one of the first instances of a rearview mirror used in an automobile race. And he won at just over 74.5 miles an hour. The race took just over 6.5 hours to complete, and yeah, that started Indy 500 history right there.
Mid 70 mile an hour average speed over the course of the race, just absolutely blistering speeds. I can't imagine it. I would be anxiety riddled through the whole thing. Christopher, it's probably the best representation we're going to find in this entire facility of what the history of this race means, both for motorsport, for American history at large. I mean, how many people know that the rearview mirror was legitimized at the first Indianapolis 500?
More after they watch this video.
Perfect. All right, let's move along a few decades. We've jumped ahead a few decades into the future from where we were just standing. We're looking at a car that looks much more purpose-built, a little bit safer, quite a bit faster than the one we just looked at, the 1911 winner. What is this beast we're standing in front of?
This is the Ballond Exhaust Special, built by George Sally, the car owner. It was built in the garage along the side of his house. He mortgaged his home to actually be able to afford to build this car. Sam Hanks drove this car in 1957, Jimmy Bryan the following year. In both years, it won. What made this car so special? The Offenhauser engine was laid flat on its side, gave the car a lower center of gravity, handled better in the turns, and they won the race. Hanks, when he won in 57, it was his 12th try. He was so in tears. He was so emotional. He retired in victory lane. What a story.
Gorgeous. You know, we're getting along to the point that these cars, and visitors are going to see this when they walk into this exhibit, these cars are starting to look radically different from each other. And some people, myself included, might say that the Indy 500 and IndyCar at large doesn't get the credit it deserves for the technological and engineering advancements it's ushered in over the years, like Formula One is often considered to have done.
Yeah, this was back in the era where if you had an idea, you could test it out to see if it worked or not. And this is one of those ideas that, hey, it worked, and it made George Sally a lot of money.
All right, well, let's jump ahead to another Indy 500 winner and my personal favorite vehicle in this entire museum. All right, Christopher, we are at my personal favorite part of this exhibit, Gordon Johncock's 1982 winning car, that beautiful STP paint scheme. One of the greatest calls, I think, in Indy 500 broadcasting history, with the battle between Gordon Johncock and Rick Mears for the win. They're married men, they've got families, they want to get home. How much are they willing to risk to win the greatest spectacle in racing? The 80s were something else, Christopher.
Well, Johncock was willing to risk more than Mears was. Rick said in a later interview he wasn't willing to crash. It was Gordon's corner, but not just the TV broadcast, but the radio call was so great too, especially because it was the only live coverage of the 500 back in those days. Fun fact about this Wildcat behind us for Patrick Racing, this was the final car assembled, winning car assembled in the United States that won the Indy 500. So a lot of special history with this Wildcat behind us. Gordon Johncock's second win. What a great race, and some people still to this day consider it to be the greatest finish in Indy 500 history, and for good reason too. Rick Mears just trying to catch up to Gordon managing just to pull out that win at the very end. What a race.
We're standing here in 1982, Christopher. We're speeding toward the 90s, one of the most tumultuous, frustrating, dangerous eras for American open wheel racing, and the car we're coming up to next was kind of, the last great example of pre-split Indy 500 action.
Yes, these cars in the early 80s were extremely dangerous. I mean, these cars behind us were built with an aluminum tub. If you crashed the wall, you were basically protected by nothing more than a tin can. You were going over 200 miles per hour. Extremely dangerous back then, and the feet were not protected at all. So we should be very, very thankful that we're in an era where the drivers are more protected and are able to walk away more often than not from their injuries.
Let's jump ahead to 1995. For 1995, in the world of American open wheel racing, things are really starting to heat up. There's a bit of trouble on the horizon. But before we got to that, we got one of the most chaotic Indianapolis 500s ever, not just in recent memory. 1995 might not be recent anymore, Jacques Villeneuve comes from 2 laps down, wins in 1995 in this gorgeous Players number 27 four-side car. How did it go?
Well, let's start with qualifying. Team Penske didn't even make the race. That's something that we didn't even think was possible back then. After a year after dominating with the 1994 Beast engine, 1995 they just did not have everything working out that well for them. Jacques Villeneuve passes the pace car during an early caution flag for debris from Arie Luyendyk's car, gets a penalty, and he makes up both of those laps. In fact, Barry Green, his car owner, said he drove those tires so hard they went through all the way to the canvas. They were so far worn. And then Scott Goodyear passes the pace car on a late race restart, and Jacques Villeneuve becomes the first Canadian to ever win the race. I believe he was the youngest driver in the field as well that year. What a race, and it just brings back so many fond memories so many years later too.
Fortunately, Jacques Villeneuve departed for Formula One shortly thereafter, became the 1997 world champion, and lived out for the rest of his career in Formula One, made a few NASCAR starts here and there, never returned to the Indianapolis 500. This is a perfect example, I think, of one of those winners that historically kind of flies under the radar. When you think Jacques Villeneuve, you don't think 1995 Indy 500 winner, but Christopher, like I said, this was a crazy race. I think a perfect representation of the chaos of the 90s in IndyCar.
Well, he did return to the Indy 500 in 2014, but no one remembers that. It's so crazy because, like, 29 years after his second Indy 500, he comes back in 2014 for Team Pelfrey, and the number 5 car was yellow, but no one remembers that yellow car because there were 2 other yellow cars that were more prominent back in 2014. But yeah, Villeneuve spent out the majority of his career in Formula One and a few NASCAR starts here and there, but people will remember him more than anything for this race, especially in this country. Now in Europe, a little bit different, but in America, this is what they remember him for.
You know what people remember the 2014 Indy 500 for? Kurt Busch.
Yeah, you're right.
All right, let's move along a bit further up in history. All right, 2011, we are officially at the second newest after Marcus Ericsson's 2022 winner was brought in. Car in this exhibit, Christopher, and this may be the most emotionally charged, the most somber, the most serious entry we're going to make at this stop of the tour. Dan Wheldon's 2011 winner. He won after J.R. Hildebrand hit the wall exiting turn 4 with a healthy lead on the final lap. His last Indy 500 win, his third to last start, I believe. He made 2 oval starts toward the end of 2011. Dan Wheldon loses his life a few months later at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Where do we start with this specific Indy 500 winner?
Well, think about this. This was one of the oldest cars that was in the field in 2011. This is one of the original 2003 Dallara IR05s back then. The car was built up over the course of several weeks before the month of May in 2011, and Brian Hurd Autosport were still very much a part-time team back then. They were partnering up with Sam Schmidt's organization, and in fact, it wasn't until Long Beach in 2011 that they announced Wheldon as being the driver of this car. He qualified, I believe, what was it, 5th or 8th? It was somewhere in the middle, one of the middle parts of the first 2 or 3 rows. He managed to get the lead from J.R. Hildebrand after Hildebrand hit the wall. It was not a good weekend for the National Guard because if you remember, Dale Earnhardt Jr. in the National Guard machine actually ran out of fuel coming out of the 4th turn at the Cook 600 that year. But yeah, I remember being in the stands for this race, and I just felt so bad for J.R. Hildebrand. But it was so great for Dan Wheldon. His mother had just gotten diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and yeah, it was just so emotional. It was a very popular win.
All right, Christopher, there's more up on this mezzanine level that you just mentioned than we can get through in one run through, but there's a ton of history contained up here from IndyCar, Formula One, sports car racing, everything. This really shows the breadth and the reach of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, doesn't it?
100%. This is really a tribute to all of the different events that either have taken place here or currently take place here. And in fact, when people walk up here to see the exhibit, the first thing that they see is the exhibit from the current, or the most recent, I should say, Indianapolis 500 winner. We have Joseph Newgarden's suit over here right beside us, a program, a couple of different things from the 2024 Indianapolis 500. And then when they walk to the left of that, they're going to see a massive screen where they can see all the different races that have taken place here at the track, both on the oval and on the road course. Looking a little bit further around, Please excuse me. We have a exhibit of the VC39 race at the dirt track inside Turn 3 of the big Indianapolis Motor Speedway paved track. We also have a bit here about the air races that Red Bull sponsored for several years here at the Speedway. A bit about Formula One here with the driver's suit from the early 2000s. I believe it's Juan Pablo Montoya, if my eyes are not deceiving me here. We also have a bit here from the sports car race with the IMSA race. They just had a 6-hour race here last September. We have a little bit here from the Brickyard 400 too. We have some art over here in the back as well, and some other fun little mementos as well, whether it's puzzles or toys, games, the whole 9 yards. It's a cornucopia from the different ownership eras of the Speedway, from the Carl Fisher era, the Eddie Rickenbacker era, which needs to get a couple more things in there. We can at least admit that. The Holman George ownership era of the Speedway, and then the Penske corner of the exhibit of the that part of the mezzanine. There's a lot of things up here that are really, really great for people to see.
Right, well, we will leave you guys with a bit of a run-through of all the stuff to see on this mezzanine, but in the meantime, let's head downstairs and see some of the more eclectic additions to this museum. This part's going to hurt my soul a little bit. It doesn't exactly feel fair to dedicate an entire section of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum tour to a NASCAR stock car. But we're standing here in front of Dale Earnhardt's number 3 Chevrolet from, I believe, the 1995 running of the Brickyard 400, and there's something just jaw-dropping about this car.
Yes, looking inside Dale's car, I mean, you can, well, first of all, Jeff Gordon's car is right across the way, and you can see inside of his car, he had, a lot of the greatest technology available in the mid-90s. The seats weren't as developed back then as they are today, but, he had a seat fully formed to him. But if you look inside Dale Earnhardt's car, it's barely a bucket seat that held the Intimidator in that car. Dale won the second Brickyard 400 with this car. He used to say, I was the first man to ever win this race after Jeff Gordon won in 1994. But yeah, the seat in Dale's car, it just does not have a lot of support around him. And yeah, it's just the amount of safety, innovation that took place over the next 6 or so years after his unfortunate passing. It just shows how much technology changes in such a quick amount of time. But yeah, we've got several Brickyard 400 winning cars down here, as well as a few other not Brickyard, my apologies. It's my turn to make a mistake now. We have a few other Indianapolis 500 winning cars over behind us in the exhibit behind over there, and then we have the 4-time winners display down here in the basement of the museum, which has been opened up after the renovations took place.
Let's run through some of these other miscellaneous cars down here, and then we'll hit that 4-time winner section. All right, we're here on the first of 2 stops that we have left on this bottom floor of the museum, Christopher. Standing next to a car that I'm going to admit I was a little bit before my time. I'm not exactly sure what I'm looking at here, but I understand that you do understand. So what's up here with this 1946 entry?
So this is the car that won the 1946 Indy 500, the Thorne Engineering Special. It was the most recent car to win with the V6 engine, or with a 6-cylinder engine rather, because it was an inline 6, until Dario Franchitti's 2012 winner, which is just over on the other side of this exhibit. So the reason why I wanted to bring attention to this car, the Second World War was coming to an end. The war against the Germans and Japanese, there was a lot of time, effort, energy spent over those years. Auto racing was banned after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. For 1942 through 45, the race was not held. And then after the surrenders, there was a lot of questions asked about, would the Speedway come back? Would the race come back even? And then the Speedway was purchased by Tony Hallman back in November of 1945 for what is rumored to be around $750,000. The weeds that grew in between the bricks and the track surface were all pulled up, and the Speedway came back for the 1946 500. And that race was actually very pivotal because it brought into focus one major issue the track had at that time: traffic. Tony Hallman did not know if there were going to be a lot of people here for the race. No, he didn't know if anyone was going to be here. He had trouble getting into his own track that day. And so from that race, a lot of the traffic plans that came about afterwards were built off of the 1946 Indy 500, won here by George Robson.
Right, let's jump ahead just about 50 years to another race that marked a pivotal point for the Speedway. Christopher, we just talked about the 1946 winner, and you mentioned after World War II, people weren't sure that the Speedway was going to come back. A bit before my time, 1996, Buddy Lazier wins in this Delta Faucet Company entry in the first 500 sanctioned by the Indy Racing League, the IRL. This was another point in time where people weren't sure that we were going to have an Indy 500 come next year. We started the split now. We're into my favorite part of the series history. Do you feel the aura emanating off this car and the trauma it represents for the sport?
Well, the trauma really here was more on Buddy Lazier, because in the second race weekend of the IRL, he had a crash at Phoenix, Arizona that broke his back very significantly. His back, just to give you a perfect visualization of it, if you take a hard-boiled egg and drop it on the floor, his back basically looked like the hard-boiled egg shell and how it was cracked. There was a special seat built for him to actually be able to be comfortable in the car while he was racing. And in fact, he actually felt most comfortable that month when he was in the race car. In fact, if you watch the post-race ceremonies when he's in the victory lane and getting out of the car, you can see him grimace with pain as he's trying to get out of the machine. But yeah, Ron Helmgarden, this was his Indy 500 win. What a great story for Buddy Lazier out of Colorado. Spent a lot of years and also ran equipment, drove for Team Menard in 1995, and managed to pull this number 91 car right behind us here in victory lane.
It's amazing to think back on that period of the sport's history and first of all come to grips with the fact that we came through it in one piece somehow, finally reunited in 2008. But even more so, you look at what the IRL set out to do, making this oval-dominated series, looking for close racing that was entertaining above all else. This thing is terrifying to look at, I think.
Yes, the 1996 Indy 500 was marked by two main events. Three actually. Number one, you have the Ari Lindike with the track record. Number two, you have the actual race itself with Buddy Lazier. But number three, and the saddest, unfortunately, Scott Brayton passed away. And in fact, it's actually a tribute logo to in memory of Scott Brayton on the nose of the number 91 car here. It was a massively unsafe time in American open wheel racing. There were new cars brought in for 1997, extra headrest protection. But it was just so sad to see what happened to Scott. But we know that his death was not in vain.
One of the newest additions to this museum, Christopher, is the four-time winners exhibit. There are four drivers in the history of this race that have won it four times, and you can come and see cars from those four winners in this new area of the basement that previously, as I understand, was not open to the public.
No, the basement was not open to the public. In fact, the Speedway actually sold tickets to people who wanted to come see the museum's basement. It was $100 a ticket, but you couldn't shoot any pictures down here. It was one of those secret, hidden holy grail kind of things. But yeah, this is the four-timers victory exhibit, and we're sitting in front of A.J. Foyt's winner from 1977. Which, fun fact, Foyt was one of the designers of the car behind us with I believe it was Bob Riley. The Coyote chassis, and also the Foyt engine behind us in the car too, which was derived from the Ford V8 engine. So yeah, AJ had a part in designing the car, the chassis, and the engine in this winning car behind us that ran for a few years back in the mid to late 1970s. But yeah, the exhibit over here has all four of the current, I should say, for now, four-time winners. There might be a fifth one coming, and sometime soon. Hey, if Justin Newgarden keeps it up, you never know. But anyway, AJ Foyt, we were going to show him right out here because he was the first four-time winner in 1961, 64, 67, and 1977. The first and only driver to win the 500 in front and rear-engine cars too.
It means a lot to win this race four times. It took a while for us to come to terms with Helio Castroneves doing it because it took him so long to do it. His wins are separated by 20 years. I think this exhibit is unique in the fact that it captures through the cars, through the text on the walls, through the suits, the helmets, the trophies, everything, the absolute, I would say, act of war that it is to conquer this race four times in the course of a single career.
Yes, I mean, you look at the old cars that are here in the museum, you had to have a lot of mechanical sympathy with those cars back then. Metallurgical science was not quite as exact. Machining wasn't exactly as precise. I mean, you still had to have a lot of precision machining back then to build, high-performance racing engines. But the way it is nowadays, it's not an endurance race. It's literally a 500-mile sprint race. And yeah, you had to really take care of your cars back then. Nowadays, you can push them a whole lot harder.
Speaking of pushing, let's push on to the Penske exhibit. All right, Christopher, we're here in the Penske-centered exhibit, standing in front of perhaps the most controversial, one of the most beautiful, and certainly the most powerful cars to ever partake in this race. Penske's 1994 entry with that absolute behemoth of a Mercedes-Benz engine in it. Where do we start with this thing?
Well, in 1991, USAC modified their rule book. Pushrod engines no longer had to be production-based, like the Buick engine was that ran here in the late 80s or mid to late 80s and early 90s. So Roger Penske, with Ilmor Engineering, who he was a co-owner of and still is a co-owner of to this day, decided we're going to try and use that change of text in the rule book to create a purpose-built racing engine using pushrods to activate the valves. And so in the span of about 10 months or so, they got this engine on track. They did a lot of testing over at Nazareth Speedway, right near Penske's base in Reading, and then they brought the car over to Michigan Speedway to do a lot of testing up there, which, conveniently enough, Roger Penske owned both tracks at the time, and so they would do a lot of testing to try and get this engine to last 500 miles, and it did, with Alan Jr. winning the race in 1994, although he wasn't the dominant car that year, was he? So Emerson Fittipaldi was dominant back in 1994. He started third that year. Paul Tracy's crash in Fast Friday prevented Penske from having a front row sweep. Emerson Fittipaldi was getting ready to try and lap Al Unser Jr. after Unser Jr. unlapped himself with about 16 laps to go. Fittipaldi hit the wall, unfortunately for him. Fortunate for Al Jr., he kept going and then ended up winning his second Indy 500, the 9th for the Unser family. And most importantly, for Mercedes-Benz, they got them their first win here at the greatest spectacle in racing.
We know that Roger Penske owns Indianapolis Motor Speedway, owns IndyCar, owns Team Penske necessarily. There's a ton of history here in this Penske exhibit, and there's way too much for us to go through in one go for one video. But the captain's done something really special, putting all of this history from his team on display in this one room with all these cars. The 94 winner, the 1988 winner, I believe, yes. The 2024 winner, which is the topic of some controversy right now.
We're not going to talk about that right now. But
no, we're not.
But I think one of Roger's favorite cars, and this will be how we end this exhibit, the 1951 winner. 1951 was Roger's first race here, back when he was a very, very young man. Lee Wallard won the race that year, and he has that car here in this exhibit as kind of a way to show everybody this is where Roger Penske's story began here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Once again, we'll leave you with a quick run through of the room to look at while we move on to our next location. Probably the shortest stop on our tour today. Behind us, Christopher, is the qualifying zone. And aside from me getting absolutely swamped by the guy behind the camera on the iRacing sim, I understand also that you've been fighting to the death with the strategy interaction here.
Yes, so the qualifying zone behind us is geared towards a younger audience. That's one of the things that the Speedway wanted to promote massively, is a push towards a younger crowd here. And that's what they've done in the qualifying zone with a lot of STEM initiatives over in the technical workshop behind us, the IndyCar with all the different iPads where you can see the different parts and pieces of the IndyCar, the iRacing simulator, and what I like the most, the strategy game where you're able to try and organize an Indy 500 winning effort or a road course race winning effort over there in the strategy zone near the simulators, which it's just so intriguing, you know, but I digress. This is geared towards a younger crowd, a younger audience, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. I went through it before the museum opened. It was great. If you have little ones, this is going to be their favorite stop in the whole museum.
All right, now, I've seen you in the media center. I've seen you on pit road. I've never seen you as locked in as I saw you at that strategy game. What is your best result so far?
I've gotten a fifth. I have gotten a fifth in the strategic Indy 500. I have yet to win. When I do, I will post about it on socials.
And you will hear about it here on FS Open Wheel, I suspect. The last stop perhaps the most therapeutic stop, and for me, certainly the most unwise in the long-term stop on our tour, is the new IMS Museum gift shop. Christopher, I know, yeah, put it away. There's a ton to see here, a ton of IMS merchandise, a ton of IndyCar merchandise, new diecasts, trading cards, this little friend we've made here.
He doesn't say anything, does he?
No, he doesn't. He's a pretty quiet guy, kind of camera shy. I personally love some retail therapy, and I think this is the perfect send-off to this new run-through this amazing museum.
Absolutely. There's anything and everything you can find here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, you will find here at this museum gift shop, which I tell you, the lights here are fantastic. They have a scoring pylon over here, which actually, funny enough, actually will cycle through the laps of a running of the Indy 500, depending on the day it is. They're running, I know earlier today they were running through 2021. I'm not sure if they're still running through it now, but they actually have the timing and scoring data on the pylon, so they can actually run through it as it ran in real time, which I think is really neat. But you've got all sorts of different things here for everybody: moms, dads, kids, just everybody, grandmas even. Even the really little ones over here in the very tiny youth section over here. I tell you, I love the new gift shop. It's insane. The variety of merchandise is awesome, and it's well displayed here.
That brings us to the end, unfortunately, but if you want to see more of this, it is required that you come in and experience the IMS Museum when you are at the Speedway. It's a canon event, as the kids might say, and I think with that, we will leave the rest of it to the imagination. Come see it for yourself. Come get your ticket. Come get your name on the donor board that helps all the work that these people are doing here carry on, and why don't we go spend some money?
I guess you could say, what's the kids say the museum is bussin'?
It's bussin'.